We put a huge premium on intelligence, on being smart. But what if there's a skill that's even more important? I'm talking about the ability to rethink. Today, we're diving into the power of knowing what you don't know, inspired by the incredible work of Adam Grant. And believe me, it's a skill that, in some cases, is literally the difference between life and death.
And yeah, I do mean that literally. To really get a grip on why rethinking is so crucial, we've got to go back in time to a super high-stakes true story. A story where one single moment of mental flexibility was the only thing that stood between a group of men and a terrifying, raging inferno.
So picture this. It's a hot August day in Montana. 15 of the most elite firefighters you can imagine, they're called smoke jumpers, parachute in to put out a wildfire. The plan seems simple enough, right? Dig a line, stop the blaze. But then, in a blink of an eye, everything goes wrong. The fire makes an impossible leap across the gulch and comes roaring right at them. We're talking a 30-foot wall of flame, and it's moving way faster than any of them can run. As his crew is scrambling up this super steep hill, their foreman, a guy named Wagner Dodge, does something that just seems insane. He stops. He pulls out a matchbook, and he starts lighting the grass right in front of them. Can you imagine? His men are completely baffled. They're terrified. One of them actually thinks, that bastard Dodge is trying to burn me to death. What they don't get is that he just invented a brand new survival strategy on the spot, an escape fire, to burn up all the fuel in his own path. 12. That's how many smoke jumpers died that day. They just couldn't rethink their own assumptions fast enough to figure out what Dodge was doing. Their training screamed at them. You run away from a fire, you don't light another one. In the end, Dodge and only 2 others made it out alive. He didn't survive because he was faster or stronger. He survived because of his mental fitness. He was able to think again. Okay, so let's shift from that literal, terrifying fire to the kinds of figurative fires we all have to deal with in our own lives. Because those smoke jumpers weren't just carrying their fear up that hill. They were carrying heavy physical tools. And just like them, all of us carry around our own kinds of tools, our beliefs, our assumptions, our habits. And sometimes they're the very things weighing us down. The tragedy of those smoke jumpers, their fatal hesitation, it's really a powerful mirror for our own minds, isn't it? It makes you ask the big question, why is it so incredibly hard to just drop what we think we know, even when there's a better life-saving option staring us right in the face? I mean, really think about this for a second. These guys are running for their lives up a steep hill, and they're still lugging 20-pound packs, axes, saws. I mean, come on. Investigators figured out later that without all that gear, they could have moved 15 to 20% faster. Most of them would have survived. But see, their tools were part of who they were. And that right there is the perfect metaphor for our own mental baggage. For a firefighter, dropping your tools feels like you're giving up, like you're admitting failure. It triggers this kind of existential crisis, right? Without my tools, who am I? And that's exactly how we feel about our most deeply held beliefs. Letting them go can feel like losing a piece of ourselves. This resistance we have is so common, it actually has a name: the first instinct fallacy. We're always told, trust your gut, stick with your first answer. But here's the crazy part. When researchers looked at 33 different studies on this, they found the complete opposite was true. In every single study, the majority of people who changed their answers on a test went from wrong to right. Rethinking actually works. So if rethinking is so powerful, what's stopping us? Well, a lot of the time, it's because we fall into one of 3 very common mindsets. You can think of them like mental cages that keep us from seeing the world clearly. First up, we've got preacher mode. This happens when our deepest beliefs get challenged. What do? We get defensive. We start delivering sermons to protect our worldview, not to actually find the truth. It's all about feeling right. Then there's prosecutor mode. When we're in this headspace, our goal isn't to learn, it's to win an argument. We become experts at pointing out the flaws in other people's reasoning, all while totally ignoring the giant holes in our own. It's about proving someone else is wrong. And finally, we have politician mode. In this mode, we couldn't care less about what's true or accurate. We're just trying to win over the crowd. We'll say whatever we think people want to hear, changing our tune just to get more support. For most of us, these 3 roles, preacher, prosecutor, politician, are our default settings. And when we're busy preaching our beliefs, prosecuting our opponents, or politicking for approval, there's just 0 room left to actually rethink anything. A perfect and pretty sad example of this trap is the story of BlackBerry.
Yeah, BlackBerry's co-CEO, Mike Lazaridis, he fell into every single one of these traps. He preached the gospel of the physical keyboard. He prosecuted the iPhone's touchscreen, calling it a flawed toy that would just kill the battery. And he politicked to his loyal business customers, completely ignoring the billions of new customers the iPhone was winning over.
So what's the way out? How do we break free from these roles that hold us back? The answer is to adopt a fourth mindset, the one that truly unlocks our potential. You've got to learn to think like a scientist. And this, my friends, is where the magic happens. You see, the preacher, prosecutor, and politician mindsets, they lock us into what's called an overconfident cycle. Our pride in what we already know leads to conviction. That conviction then makes us search only for evidence that supports what we already believe, which just validates our pride all over again. It's a closed loop, and it's exactly what sunk BlackBerry.
But a scientist operates in a totally different way. It's called the rethinking cycle. It all starts with intellectual humility, just admitting you don't have all the answers. That humility opens the door for doubt, which then sparks curiosity. And that curiosity leads to new discoveries, which only reinforces the idea that there's always more to learn. See? It's an open loop of constant growth.
Okay, but let's be real. Does this actually work in the real world? It sounds nice and all, but does it affect the bottom line? Well, some researchers in Italy ran this amazing experiment with over 100 startups to find out just that. For these startups in the control group, the ones who just followed a traditional business plan, this was their average yearly revenue, $255.40. Yeah, not exactly a home run. But now, look at this. The group that was trained to think like scientists, to treat their strategy like a theory, to run experiments, to pivot when the data told them to, their average revenue was over $12,000. They were earning money more than twice as fast. And why? Because they were willing to totally rethink their business when the evidence showed them they were wrong. And that brings us right back to where we started, from a wildfire in Montana, to a boardroom in Canada, to a startup lab in Italy. The lesson is exactly the same. The ability to rethink, to question what you know, it's one of the most powerful skills we can possibly develop. So let's go back one last time to that firefighter's haunting question. It's a question every single one of us should be asking ourselves. What are the tools, the beliefs, the opinions, the habits that you're still clinging to? Which ones are actually helping you, and which ones are just weighing you down as you try to outrun your own fires? In the end, the goal isn't just to be right, it's to have the courage to get it right. So I'm going to leave you with a little challenge. As you go about your week, what's one assumption you've held for a long time that you're finally ready to question? Because honestly, it's always a good time to think again.